Well, here I am. It turned out I scratched my right cornea. I don't know how. I don't know how it happened, and I'm not sure when, except it had to have been Sunday, early afternoon sometime. But I've got something to put on it and so on. Again, Mark Muse's book. Hey, get out of there. Coco! Oh, my dog. Get out of there. She'll just eat anything. Ah! So Confucius, one of the great figures of the axial period, roughly contemporary with Plato and Socrates in Greece, and with many Hebrew prophets, and who knows who else. But those are some of the main folks. And again, this theory of an axial age, named that by Karl Jaspers. It'd be amazing to me if nobody else had ever pointed out the number of significant spiritual and moral leaders that emerged during this, roughly 300 to 400, 500 period in history. But Jaspers, who is the last name, as you know, on the list of significant people and dates in Muser's prefix, and that had to be slightly a little joke, but Jaspers was the one that named this the axial age. With Confucius, we have someone that emerges during a time that, as Musa mentions, is called the first for one thing, it's the age of the warring states. A great deal of violence, a great deal of bloodshed, and military coups and so on between among feudal lords in China. And so it's not only a period of the warring states, it's also called the period of the 100 philosophers. I'm sure that's not meant to be literal, but it's a gesture toward a lot of people, as far as I know, all men, but wouldn't it be great if there were some Chinese women among them, but who primarily were trying to offer a solution to the rampant violence, chaos, disorder, fear that had come to dominate much of northeast China during this period. And Confucius really emerges as, one of two big answers to this. I mean, if there's 100, let's just say that number one and number two far outdistance the other 98. Confucius is one, and the other is the school of Taoism, at least traditionally and perhaps rather mythologically attributed to a teacher named Lao Tzu. We'll get to him soon enough, and I know that if you watch the video on religions in China from the Long Search series, I'm quite sure Lao Tzu's name gets invoked. I haven't seen it in a while. So Confucius' solution, essentially, just to make sure you get the main points here, is a return to the past, or at least a return to a past, undoubtedly a past that was itself highly mythologized. But Confucius was reaching back 500 or 600 years to what he thought of as a golden age, and an age of prosperity, unity, peace, good manners, lots of polite people. And Confucius felt like the way to restore order to the disorder of his time was basically to return to, I would say, very traditional values. They're highly patriarchal, we might say, by the way, but that's not to be, that would be to be expected certainly at that time. Confucius insisted often, or at least enough, that he was merely going back to retrieve classic ideas and practices that had to do with civic virtue. Musa mentions music and art. Other, I know archery is in there somewhere. But Confucius believed that retrieving traditional Chinese values, especially of the family, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, would be the path to peace in his time. Now, as much as he insisted that he was merely retrieving from the past, something that needs to be said is that even if that's what he thought he was doing simply, and I don't know if he really thought that, but anytime anyone, whether it's Confucius or somebody else, says, they're going to reach back to some past ideal, some, earlier scenario where everything was great, and all we're going to do is just go back and get that, just sort of like whole hog, that's just not true. And either the person is trying to fool others or perhaps even fool him or herself. Because any retrieval like that, as noble as it might be, will also always be a reinterpretation. That's just unavoidable. Confucius is reaching back for traditional teachings and values, but Confucius is a remarkable man and a remarkable teacher, it's clear, and there's no way that somebody of this kind of creativity and intellect is simply going to repeat the themes of the past. Even if that's his goal, there will be creative reinterpretation. So I just want to say that off of the bat because I think it's important to acknowledge. Now, Musa hasn't said it as clearly, and Ronald Ayer in The Long Search mentions it very quickly. But for Confucius, everything is based on some fundamental relationships. And one of the terms that gets associated with Confucius often, I even mentioned it in class on Friday, is the phrase, the rectification of names. Rectification of names. Now, to rectify something is to set it straight again. Our word correct actually has the same bit of a root in there as rectification. So to rectify something is to set it right, to restore it to its proper, rightness, you might say. And then names, in this case, probably a better term would be titles. Confucius believed that everything rests on everybody recognizing the title / role of everybody else within that person's web of relationships. This is all about finding one's proper place in terms of one's title by virtue of relationships to others. So, to illustrate, for Confucius, the most fundamental of these relationships is that of father to son. So there's a great deal wrapped into this. And by the way, notice it is patriarchal. It's father, and it would be to the oldest son primarily, but it's the father-son relationship, and everything that the son owes in terms of honor and respect, deference, obedience, and what the father owes in terms of instruction, setting a good example, caring for the needs of the son, and supporting the son in proper endeavors. That relationship is the fundamental one. From that relationship, everything else flows. And it might be interesting for you to understand that the next relationship is husband to wife. So essentially in this model, husband is to wife as father is to son. So again, father-son is the fundamental relationship. Husband and wife taking the cues of their relationship from father to son. From that, you also then have ruler to subjects. The ruler, of course, is functioning like a father. The subjects would be the offspring, the son. This then goes on to relationships between siblings, older siblings to younger siblings, father to son. and then to friends as well. And I think that somewhere, probably Musa might have mentioned something about the relationship being between friends being the one most liable toward equality or equanimity. But in fact, for Confucius, age matters here. So between friends, the older of the friends is likened to the father. The younger of the friends then is in the role or model of the son. So for Confucius, understanding who you are within that nexus of relationships, fundamentally defined by father to son, to find your proper role and to abide by your proper role is really what it means to be part of the rectification or the correctification of names or of roles. The real idea here is of roles, starting with the family, again, and very specific relationships within the family. When you've said this, you've said a great deal about what Confucius thought. Now, Musa mentions that certainly well before Confucius' time, Chinese philosophy, and I'd say Chinese culture, has always held harmony in very high regard. That harmony is the greatest, value and virtue to be striven for in one's individual life and in culture or society. Obviously, in the period of warring states, harmony was not easily found. So for Confucius, the way to this harmony, and let me use the word way one more time, as Musa mentions, the operative term here is Dao. Typically now we spell it D-A-O. You might see it spelled T-A-O. Scholarship now is leaning toward the use of the letter D, Dao and Taoist and so on. But in any case, it's basically the Chinese term for way, W-A-Y. And so the way of and the way to harmony for Confucius is quite structured. You really need to hear this. It's quite structured by these expectations that go with your particular role or roles in family, in friendships, in society, political loyalties, and so on. For Confucius, the Tao is, I would just say, highly structured and clearly patriarchal in nature.